Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thursday afternoon. I just wanted to say that for the most part, people did excellent work on their first module, their first milestone grade. That would be milestone 2.2. I'm going to say that these milestones are critical because one builds on the other one. If you take a moment and you go back and you review the whole course, the whole arc of the course over the 8-week time that we have together, you will see that each of these modules, each of these milestones in the course, one builds on the other. So that if you do well on the first milestone and the second milestone too, you've done 2/3 of your final paper. That's the way this works. Okay? By the time you get to the final paper at the end, you should be able to combine your milestones together. Okay? And if you go into this thinking this way, you're going to have a very good chance of success. Many people did excellent work. A few recommendations about writing. First of all, always edit your work in this and every class at SNHU before you submit it. Edit your work for sentence construction, for use of punctuation, spelling, run-on sentences, fragment sentences, this sort of thing. It doesn't take long. It's not as arduous a task as you would think it is. And it will bode you very well, because every rubric that you have in every assignment, including your discussions, grades you on mechanics. So that's number one. Number two, I'd like to talk about a few common mistakes that people make. And there are two kinds, basically, that I see repeated. One is unnecessary use of superfluous information that doesn't tell us much. That's number one. And number two would be focus, the narrow and breadth of focusing. Okay, so let's talk about number one. Many people have been used to writing a paper called a reaction paper in an English class. This is not what you're doing here. And many people know this. So don't tell me, for example, that drugs are a huge problem. What is that? Are they a small problem? No. Or that bullying is very bad and causes a lot of damage. Is that as opposed to slightly bad? Think about this kind of language. One way you can go to a very quick solution to this is to eliminate entirely the use of adverbs. Very, many, huge, or adjectives, huge, historic, etc., etc. Okay? Unless you're following it up with historical examples, that last one. So eliminate this sort of language. Or the use of cliches. Many people's loved ones are affected by alcohol. Is that versus the people who they don't like? So you see how that works. Just eliminate this kind of language. Okay, that's the first category of edits I would suggest you making in your language. The second and more general issue, and people were off to an excellent start, and I've told you, is narrow your focus. Narrow your focus. Let me give you an example. Yes, there are many kinds of bullying. Yes, it's had a history. We don't know, for example, if it's an international problem or not, and that's really not our concern here. Our concern should be, if you're looking at bullying, you're looking at workplaces, schools, involuntary activities in the United States. Okay, that's going to be the scope of what we're looking at here. Okay, yes, bullying's a problem. Okay, that doesn't really tell me much. I think an excellent example of someone who wrote about this told me that bullying was a problem for LGBTQ youth. Okay, And they went on to talk about why this is a problem. Okay? So, and they narrowed their focus. And the only thing I would say is, that's great. That's a solid, narrow category. Another category that people were tended to be general about was crime and violence. Don't tell me that crime is bad, okay? The person who was most successful at this talked about violent crime as a subset of categories of crimes that the Justice Department keeps data on. They're called index crimes, and they show up in something called the Uniform Crime Report. We can analyze the degree to which they're a social problem using that narrow focus. You've got to narrow your focus. Not just, don't tell me about drugs. What drugs? If legalized marijuana is a drug. Fentanyl is a drug. Budweiser is a drug. Tobacco and this cup of coffee are a drug. Narrow, narrow, narrow. Okay? So, for those few folks who got off to a false start, I've given you the opportunity to redo and resubmit your assignment. Make use of it. Also, the last point I would make is most people here have had excellent training in the use of citations and references. Occasionally, I would ask somebody to review their citation style, and if that was you, please do so. Have a good week. I think we're off to a solid start here. Take care. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email.